Hi everyone, Dr. S here, and this lesson is about the whys and hows of conducting awesome customer interviews. We're going to go through three parts really. First, this is going to be about the purpose, then we'll have another video on who's involved, the people, and then we'll talk about process and resources for actually making it happen. So let's just jump in. Let's talk about first, what in the heck actually is an interview? Really, all an interview is a couple different people, maybe one, maybe two, maybe a whole team, talking to someone of interest and exchanging data. They're typically live, they're out of the building, because where are the answers? Almost all the answers are out of the building, and they're purposeful and intentional. And the purpose and intention is typically trying to collect data, and the data tends to be around what you're trying to do in your evidence-based entrepreneurship process. So let's talk a little bit more about the purpose of those interviews and why you'd be collecting that data. First of all, let's look at experiments. Really what we're doing is we're experimenting, and it's a particular type of experiment. There's multiple kinds. One, you can just do to try out some new experiences. You're trying to just try to say, hey, what might be out there for me? What sort of opportunity there? This is active exploration, useful for generating new business ideas. Go out and explore. Super good idea. It also helps you do a lot of self-discovery. Next is taking apart products, processes, and ideas. So like something that exists, you can take it apart, say, hey, what are all the component parts? And this, again, can be useful in generating new business ideas. But the one that we're focused on here is about testing ideas through pilots and prototypes. And this is for useful for generating and testing new business ideas to see what works. So there'll be a little bit of exploration, and some of this is some interviews focus on customers, some focus on stuff. So sometimes you're trying to figure out the business models, and so on. But for this particular lesson, we care about the customers. So let's take a look at what we're talking about in terms of time frames. Really, we're doing discovery and testing in three different time frames. You should be familiar with the Z model. We have pre and post prototypes in phase 1, post-launch, pre-launch, and then post-launch in phase 2 and phase 3. And for the interest of our different projects in class, Venture Project 1 typically is dealing with pre and post prototype. Then Venture Project 2 is dealing ultimately with your own, trying to get to launching your venture, which will involve your pre-launch activities and your post-launch activities. So let's talk about pre-prototype work. This is before you have a prototype, and your outcomes that you're trying to achieve deal with really trying to zero in on the problem and opportunity statement. We have a video for this. You should go ahead and take a look at that video, but ultimately you're trying to discover what is that problem or opportunity that is there with the different customers. Thus, you're trying to build early empathy and understanding, and you're doing this in multiple interviews. You're doing multiple. Here's one, here's two, and ... means it's going on to however many that you ultimately end up having. And this lines right up with the BIC. Who are we talking about? What sort of customers are we talking about? What problem or desire do they have? And how are they trying to solve it now? And what's the gap? And the gap is critical because that's the thing that ultimately leads you to be able to talk about what the outcome here that you want for the pre-prototype piece. Next, we move on to post-prototype. And here the outcomes expand. We're looking for product market fit. We're looking for building out your minimum viable product, something that functions at a minimum level in terms of meeting the needs of the customer. And at the end of this stage, you have to make a decision. Do I continue, or do I change my direction? And here, the big thing is we're looking for fit. Is there a fit with the customer and the type of offering that you're thinking about? Is there a fit with you? Do you fit with this? Is this something you want to go on? Can you put a team together? And again, this relates to a lot of the BIC. You want to dial in everything that we had from above. We want to flesh out the offering and try to tie it and get product market fit. This is, again, the fit between what the customer desires or needs and what you're offering. A fit between you, like why you, and again, see the BIC video for understanding that more. And finally, can you actually put a team together to make this all happen? We practice in our classes using Venture Project 1 to do this multiple times, because this is bread and butter sorts of knowledge, skills, and ability for any sort of entrepreneur or innovator trying to make things happen in the marketplace, whether it be for-profit ventures, nonprofit ventures, or some sort of social venture. All right, so then what we end up doing is we get into, once we have product market fit and decide to go on, we get into pre-launch sorts of stages where we'd use interviews, and this would be dealing with trying to validate the business model. Is it actually launchable? Again, you're still working on fit, you're doing all the stuff above, and you're working on business design, and then you're doing the 9 different things, and you're still running multiple iterations. So once you switch over to the business model canvas, you're still doing multiple iteration and testing each one of those different components in here, from the customer and value proposition all the way down to the revenue and cost structures. Finally, post-launch, you're still using interviews, and again, validating business models and trying to scale up your impact, whether it be economic impact for yourself or for others, the types of impact you're trying to have in the world. And this is when you can ultimately transform from a startup or a venture looking for a viable business model, viable, sustainable, scalable business model, to an ongoing venture. Again, you're looking for fit, and this time you're trying to get business design and scale, and using all of the same BMC sorts of questions, doing multiple iterations of the business model. An interview can be used in any of these different stages, and should be used in any of these different stages along the way in moving on your venture. The next lesson will focus on part 2, which is dealing with who is involved.